to be recording now, you can pause and record, but if you want to go full screen, hit this.
Wait,
Oops,
well, what I want to do is not record right now.
get to the full screen, and I might be able to do that.
I just,
Okay, so just hit this right here. So you can go, it's right.
I'm gonna call the DRB meeting to order, yeah, at 2 minutes after 7. And at 5 after, we have the public hearing and historic site review with Tom Saukus. Is that you?
No, I'm Peter Scott.
Okay, you're Peter Scott.
Massage therapist.
Okay, that's what MBS is.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Mind, body, spirit.
Mind, body, spirit. Nice. Okay. And so you're here to speak to this.
I was
today.
told by Tom, my landlord, to submit in the envelope there, the yellow folder there, a description of the business and any registration that I might have or certification and things of that nature.
Okay, great. And then, you gonna sign in? Did he
I
sign
can
in?
do
You
that.
sign in? Anybody else here for the hearing that we're having? No. Okay, so nobody else wants to sign in for that hearing? Okay. Well, I say it's 5 after, and we'll call this public hearing and historic site review 2025-04. It's a conditional use change of use, and it's changing from a yoga studio and a lawyer's office to a
Massage studio
massage studio,
and a church.
because it says and a church, yes. So Karen, did the church submit a sign permit
Yeah.
a while back?
Yeah.
And did we didn't need to see that because it fit
yeah.
the regs? Okay. Just wanted to be
did
clear
see
about
it.
that. That was one of my questions. The other question I have is a site plan was submitted. And did you see, it's right here? And I have a feeling that this is where Karen, you could help. That's not it. That right next, so the site plan, it's the town map. Let me find it before I say anything else. You want to speak about your business, maybe while we could talk about your business and then we could talk about the site plan.
Well, I've been a massage therapist for over 30 years. I got my license in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the American Institute for Massage Therapy. And I've worked in Boca Raton and throughout South Florida, and I worked in Tucson. And then this space became available over here, and it was after the yoga studio moved on, and I just felt a calling to open up a studio.
Yep, and we probably should open up our change of use. Yes. Oh, yeah, let me do that. Thank you. All right. Peter, I need you to raise your right hand and affirm that I hereby affirm that the evidence I give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury. Yeah, okay. Thank you. All right. So let's go to the new regs. We're looking at the new regs.
There's not much
Much the-
change in terms of what's going on with
Right there.
that part.
So really, we just need to consider, well, I had a few questions, not so much about his business because it's very similar. It's actually smaller than the yoga business, right?
Mhm.
And the issues that I saw in the previous conditional use were parking because there's really only one extra 1.5 parking spots.
Right.
And the last conditional use said people could park in the Mill Street parking and the town hall building parking. So your clients will have to probably not park in the parking lot because there's no parking lots assigned to your space. There's one parking spot assigned to the other space at this point. But we,
Okay.
you know, so that's something that you would want to let your customers know, that they would need to park either on Mill Street.
Like in town,
Park in town, or they can park here across
okay,
the street as long as there's not a big community event happening,
great, thank you,
okay?
sure.
Yeah.
And there is no space, just to be clear, for parking.
There's-
In our building, 16 Main Street,
There's really 1.5, one's parking spot.
right?
And so we could assign, we could talk about that. Do we assign it to either business?
Or waive everybody. Or waive parking for
Everybody,
everybody except for the, people who,
the residents.
yeah,
So keep the 4.5 for the residents that was given, and then there's 1.5 for downstairs.
Right.
And they can just share it. You could also just say they share it, the one spot,
right,
okay?
Yes, ma'am,
Okay. And that would be written up in the permit.
okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
So the Journey Fellowship, folks, nobody's here for the Journey Fellowship?
We just had there was a bunch of people in the waiting room.
Okay,
So is anyone that was in the waiting room here for the hearing?
Tom is there.
oh, great. Hi, Tom, can you, make yourself be known? I see you. Can you
Yes.
speak?
Hi, everyone.
Can I swear you in to speak at the hearing? May
Say
I
that again,
swear you
please.
in? I'd like to swear you in to be able to speak at the hearing. So you want to
Yes.
raise your hand and, you say, I hereby affirm that the evidence I give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury. So you say I affirm, or yes.
Yes,
Great, thanks, welcome. We've just been talking to Peter about his space
okay,
and his business, and then we were on parking. And the last conditional use that was given to your building has 4.5 parking spots designated to the 3 residents. And 1 parking spot that was given to the previous law office.
yes,
And we were just discussing, we can either waive parking for both of these businesses or assign that parking spot to both businesses. As business owner, do you have preference to that? I mean, there's 1 spot, for the businesses downstairs?
I would like to leave it as is, please. I mean, that's kind of what I said to both parties coming into it, to Peter, that basically there wasn't a assigned spot. And I said that to the fellowship, that there was an assigned spot, so ideally just leave it
Okay.
as is, please.
Okay, so we'll just assign 1 spot to both businesses. And in the conditional use change, and in the findings and decision, I would ask my board to support that spot be shared, and that the businesses let their customers and community know that they need to park at the Mill Street parking, or as long as there's not an event happening, they can use the town Opera House parking area. So that's something those businesses should tell their customers and clients. Okay?
Okay, great.
The other thing I wanted to ask Karen about is that, right next door to your lot, you've written Hodgkins as the owner, but
Yes.
isn't that the parking, and show me town
Maybe-
parking. Is this town parking? Is this the town
Yes.
parking? Okay, so no worries. Then this includes the parking.
Right.
Okay. That's my question.
The other thing is, I did put in this application, the new fellowship guy did send me a email with what's going on with his business.
I did read that.
Okay.
I did-
He did have some hours that he was working.
Yeah, and we can put that in there.
Right.
Oh, hours in addition to what, the meeting hours? No.
Well, you can, he's by appointment. And the
Okay.
other person has like meeting hours, and he did put it in his emails, and I think that we have in the past established business hours.
Yes, well, I think that's fine to do that. Um. I'll look for that, unless you have that email up easily, we could just look at what his hours were.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, that'd be great, thanks. Let me see, I have other questions. In the previous conditional use, there was a question about occupancy limits, Tom. And it was said that you would, or your client, your renters would reach out to the Department of Fire Safety, probably a owner issue to determine the occupancy limit. Now,
Okay.
we can, do you have an occupancy limit for that space that was formerly the Blatchley's law office?
I don't recall, I know that the fire marshal did inspect the place when I first purchased it and remodeled it. But I don't recall if they put an occupancy limit, they just basically signed off that it was up to code.
Okay, so that's another option. Do we want to request that they get I mean, the state's in charge of occupancy limit, really, so we could just put it in there that it's up to the fire marshal to determine the occupancy limit again? Are you all right with that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, those were the issues that I saw.
And I've got the hours of operation here. It's Tuesday from 6 to 7:30 PM and Sundays 9:30 to 12.
And then maybe by appointment.
And then there's a few additional times per year to accommodate special events.
Well, I think we
then-
can put that in there.
Yeah.
And also if the minister by appointment, like he has office hours, it's not really open to the public then. Okay, I would entertain a motion to basically to make a decision with any conditions. Set any condition.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Do I-
That we support the change of
Yes,
use
yes,
with to change of use to these two businesses as stated in the permit application. Let's do that. How's that?
that's good.
And then any conditions that we want to put on it, that both businesses will share the parking
Yeah.
spot, and that they'll inform their clients and customers that there's additional parking in town, that there's only one parking spot to share, and the Opera House when there's not events. So that should be a part of the conditions.
Okay,
And then the other condition we discussed was for the fellowship of hours
Yeah.
as stated in his letter. You
Mhm.
could just do that, and then you could get it, whoever writes the decision up, we could.
I mean, we could just put the hours in the
Okay.
decision.
All right.
That's no problem.
You wanna speak it out so Nancy
Yeah.
has it?
The hours are Tuesdays from 6 to 7:30 PM and Sundays 9:30 to noon. That's the typical.
And then and it's also open for other events from
Yeah.
time to time.
And then
Put that
there
in
was
there.
the,
Not
do we wanna
limited
put
to.
the occupancy in there as
Mm.
well.
Yeah, and the occupancy for the church would be determined by the Department of Fire Safety.
okay,
Okay,
sure, why not?
well, the occupancy
Yes.
limits, you do want to be aware of that. I mean, it's a state issue, so
Yes.
I just think it's good to
Okay.
say that. All right? Any questions, anything?
No, ma'am. If you have any of me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Tom, do you have anything from us?
And nothing else at this point, just want to say thank you and, yeah, so, yeah, thank you.
Big hug, Tom.
Alright,
Feel the love, brother.
do we need a second for the?
Yeah, we do need a
I'll
second.
second.
Yeah.
that.
Thank you.
And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye,
All right, so then we can,
Am I done?
The three of
You're
you
done.
can leave.
You're done.
Yeah.
and let's see, it is 7:16, and I will close that hearing. We don't even know how to close the hearing, do we?
I don't think so.
Okay, great. So we put it at 7:35 for the discussion of the
Excuse me.
sketch plan review. Yes.
Don't you want to do the minutes?
Yeah, we can do the
Let's do
minutes.
the minutes. Yeah, we have a little bit of time. And I did read the minutes. You said you had some edits.
They were very minor.
Yes.
So it was just little things, so they look
Okay,
good.
I'm gonna log off and
Okay,
It's done.
have a great
I-
evening.
thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Minutes. Yeah, I'll take a motion to adopt the minutes or approve the minutes. I think we
I'll move to
minutes.
approve the minutes.
And I'll second it. And I didn't have any edits. I thought they were great. Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome. Wait, who made the motion?
I did.
And I seconded. Because we called that site, the site review, excuse me, the sketch plan review for a little while later, maybe we could do another few minute other business. items.
Sure. And do we need to have a approval of the minutes? And
Yeah, all in favor, say
aye.
aye. Okay,
Just
keep
to make it
keeping me on
official.
task. I'm like, we got it.
So,
All right.
oh,
Yes, please.
so I have two new applications.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had talked about having, Lloyd Burnham's boundary line adjustment after we would do.
Bearish.
Continuation of bearish, then Lloyd. And,
And
boundary line adjustment, and then
if there is a hearing.
then we would do that.
Yes.
hearing. Also, I have one from Frank Mitchell,
Yep,
which is a PUD, but it's gonna be a conditional use. There's no subdivision.
what, okay.
Yes, this is new.
How can you have a PUD that doesn't fall under subdivision, right?
Because he's not making individual lots. For sale. It's just,
But- Isn't it a planned unit development, multi-buildings?
But it's not a subdivision, right?
well,
So
it's not a subdivision, it can, a PUD can be a subdivision, that's when people divide off lots to sell. And a PUD is when it's more of a group. And they're not individual lots.
Well, we did that in East Montpelier and we still had to go through the conditional use.
It's a conditional use for a PUD.
But we still had to do, well, I guess a lot of the subdivision just isn't required to be.
I think if you read, I mean, I just wanted, he's not in a big rush, so it doesn't necessarily have to be in,
April,
April,
it
it
could be in
May.
May. Let's do that in May.
yeah,
right? Okay,
Let's do that in May.
Okay.
Great, those were the other businesses that I had. The other thing I had, since we've got a little time, is we had talked via email, Karen, about updating the zoning permit application and perhaps having a separate subdivision permit again. Is that, oh, and Will's here. Maybe we can have that conversation with Will.
Yep. So, just on the updated zoning?
Yeah, I mean, Karen and I were just, when we've been talking about the process of subdivisions, and there used to be in 2010, when the DRB was first formed, there was a subdivision application separate from the zoning permit applications. And we stopped using those, because, tell us why, Karen.
there were so many applications and we weren't having. It just became easier to have the same application, but there's more than just that, there's like the subdivision review, the PUD. We need to have a new access permit. Application, because it now goes to the zoning administrator.
Oh, it does no longer go to the select board.
No.
Good.
So there's a whole mess, and I was thinking, Will, as the planning commission, don't we work on redesigning applications?
We can do a redesign of the application, but as far as how to proceed, until we do that, whatever you've been doing in the past few years, you should continue to do until the planning commission comes up with a new application.
Of course, but I was just putting that on the plate, since it seems like we will be getting more applications. It seems like the DRB is getting busier and they are
You-
more diverse.
Yeah, you will be getting busier, so yeah, that's, Karen mentioned that to put on the planning commission agenda. And we
Okay.
can look at that. And if you,
That's fine.
we'll send you the template and for comment. Cause,
Okay, well, that'll be helpful and, because I do find that our applications seem a little obtuse. It'd be great if they could provide a little more information.
applications are supposed to be that way, I think. Yeah, we can improve them.
Thanks.
So yeah, whatever we come up with, we'll definitely send to you to make better.
Okay, all right,
Excuse me.
yes,
Is this being recorded?
yes.
Okay,
It
thank
is.
you.
All right, well, those were my other businesses and I might as well go ahead and we can open, since it's not a hearing, I don't have to stick to this time frame. But I was just thinking people might have wanted to come at the time, so give it a little more time. And I will go ahead and move to the subdivision and PUD sketch plan review for the Plainfield Village Expansion Project with Sandra and Arian, yeah? So would you give me a little guidance about, should we look at the zoning regs, Karen, to how to move through a sketch plan review?
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
May I make a point of order?
Sure,
Thank you. My name is Michael Birnbaum. A few of you may remember that I was zoning administrator, a couple behind Karen.
okay.
And I have two questions. First question is, was the applicant for this sketch plan the current owner? And the second question is, if not, would the application be proper? And should the Development Review Board consider postponing this hearing until it can be made proper? If that's not the case.
Okay, this is, let me say a few things. This isn't a hearing. This is a sketch plan review. It's a meeting that's not called warned. It's a meeting and with the potential applicants. No application is required for a sketch plan review. We do have, but the things we do need is to know that if somebody's submitting a subdivision regulation, that we would need the permission of the landowners if the landowners are not the applicants, and the landowners are not the applicants. And I believe there's 2 landowners that are involved in this proposal. And we have submitted, we've been submitted letters of their approval, which is posted at the town and is included in the,
It's in that file right there.
right here. So if you'd like to see that, you could see it. It's right here. And the applicant's name is the Plainfield Village Expansion Committee. And so this is just gathering information today about what would be required of a subdivision application, all that the DRB would need to consider so that they could come with all of the information that they would need for the hearing to use all of our time wisely. So that's
Thank you. I'm familiar with everything you just said.
okay.
I'd like to just read to you your own regulation.
Could you speak
Sketch
up,
plan
Michael?
Application, it's section 531. Any owner of land shall, prior to submitting an application for subdivision of land, submit to the zoning administrator at least 15 days prior to the regular meeting of the Development Review Board 2 copies of the sketch plan of the proposed subdivision. And then it goes on. So my understanding of that language is that an owner must submit an application. Those are the words in the regulation.
Karen, you want to speak to this? Because we've been going through this and my, the owner applicants, in my understanding, and I think we also spoke to the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. You did, right? About that? Applicants and landowners are not necessarily always the same person.
Right, the applicants can be a representative of the owners, as long as the owners have given them permission.
If you look at 532, it says meeting attendance, the subdivider or his or her authorized representative shall attend the meeting. There's a distinction between owner and applicant and representative, and the representative appears as for meeting purposes, but not for application purposes.
I don't understand.
The applicant needs to be an owner. It says it in.
That's not our understanding. We've had applicants not being the owner for, permits in the past, so. That, and Karen,
Yeah.
is that your understanding?
Yes, I mean, Chase and Chase comes in many times as the representative of the owner and as the applicant. So I'm trying to get to where we're going.
Well, if that's the case, this language needs to be changed.
Okay.
Because this language clearly does not say what you're interpreting.
Okay, well, we'll work on that. I'm sure that there's lots of things we need to work on.
And as a result, if someone were to appeal somewhere along this process, your efforts might be to no avail. Whereas if we make this proper, then you wouldn't have that jeopardy.
Thank you for your bringing that to our attention. And this is an informal meeting, so as I said, it's not, the applicant hasn't, an application, we will move forward as one step at a time, but right now we're just sharing information with a sketch plan review. Yeah,
Charlie
Charlie.
Conger. Also in your zoning regulations, 442. It says the applicant's legal name and address and phone number should be included. If the applicant is not a natural person, the applicant shall provide the name, the state in which it is incorporated, and the name and address of the resident agent.
I have that on this application right here, and it's the applicant's name is Plainfield Village Expansion Committee and the care of Sandra Zitvitsum Architect, 14 Lomas Street, Montpelier, Vermont. So we have an applicant, we have a legal person representing the committee.
And, okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, Karen, help me.
My understanding was that you go to section 5.3 and make sure that all those things are on the sketch plan. And it is an informal meeting, but it's also the primary responsibility of the planning commission, not planning commission, the development review board, is to determine whether it's a minor or major subdivision.
So our scope is pretty limited at this meeting, but isn't it also, if we determine it's a major or minor, then also to look at the things that are required to present at a hearing, or is that not our job? It's up to the applicant to do that?
Okay, so go to number 4. Action on sketch.
Sketch plan, okay? In the new regs, right? Action on the sketch plan. Development Review Board shall study the sketch plan with it to determine whether or not it conforms to or would be in conflict with the town land use and development regulations and any other regulations currently in effect. The Development Review Board shall determine whether the sketch plan meets the purpose of these regulations. We will make any specific recommendations, that's what I thought, for changes that may request additional information to be submitted with the application, including but not limited to surveys, special studies, and or supporting documentation as appropriate. Such recommendations and requests shall be given to the applicant within 30 days of the meeting, which this sketch plan is classified. Okay, so I guess the first thing we have to do, we have the site plans. That's what we're looking at today, correct? Karen,
Has the large one. So,
you want to pull them out for us, Sandra? Thank you.
My name is Sandra Bitzkin. I am a representative for the committee and authorized by the owners of the project. I had some procedural questions that I'm hoping there's time to cover tonight. The scope of variances and waivers that I think we need to ask for. It's clear in the instructions that they have to be spelled out in the application, which would be the next step. So if there is time, I would like to do that.
Yeah.
And then also go over the overall schedule for approval.
Okay. Can we look at the site
Yeah.
plan first?
Yes.
Okay.
This exhibit is sorry, it's so small. I asked for a full size. It is the meets and bounds survey made by the surveyor, which is one of the requirements. Would people like me to circulate that around the room? It is on your website, I checked. Would anyone like to see that? Okay. I may need an assistant to hold these up, but this next drawing is the existing site plan. And as far as I'm aware, I've covered all of the requirements on it. The owners are listed. And there is the zoning districts and the site locus map or location. Significant natural features are included. And those include a class 2 wetland and its buffer, it's kind of second area over here with buffer, a class 3 wetland here, and some steep slopes.
That's the green?
Yeah, and well, there, it's wooded.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what the dark green
Yeah,
is.
mostly wooded. There is an existing farm road up this way. There are some stone walls. There is no primax soils, inventoried on the site. And no significant wildlife habitat. George and Rose have done a really thorough inventory of the wildlife they've seen over the years. And that will be submitted next time,
The hearing,
when it's appropriate.
when
Yeah,
there's a hearing, yeah.
yeah, it's really great information. It has been either pasture or meadow for over 100 years.
I had on that.
It was kind of interesting that there were no roots found in any of the soil testing, meaning it's been open for like maybe 200 years. Like no, roots last a long time under the ground. And yeah, we're being very careful of the steep slope area that drains to Great Brook. And then we've marked all the neighbors. And I can't think of any, I can't remember what else you need on the map. So we've got a scale and orientation.
In the historic site,
There's no,
driveways, so Jerry said that.
Yeah.
And I think you
hopefully,
covered
I covered-
everything.
hopefully I've done my job. Okay.
Yeah.
Then the next, did anyone have any questions on this first drawing? Thank you. The second drawing is the proposed. This design is the result of quite a bit of analysis and then leading up to a community design workshop that 50 people attended, plus a bunch of like facilitators. We came up with 10 designs after the first session, and they were kind of merged into 3 possibilities. Then the group redivided and worked on those 3 possibilities. And then they were kind of filtered through again. We've had 2 surveys that brought it down to 1 design, and then we've done some fine tuning. This was quote frozen on February 25th when this was submitted. And because the committee is transitioning to be a town committee, there has been no design
Changes.
no. It needs to wait until the committee's, the committee has changed.
Okay,
So, do you want me to say some more things about this?
sure. I mean, for us, I think what's important is that it meets the, what needs to be on that, which would be like, which I have to look at, right? If it's, well, first we have to determine, maybe we should pause. We would determine that this is a major subdivision. So I think that's something we can determine as a board, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a major subdivision, and so we would want the map to meet the requirements of a major subdivision site plan, so we could, the preliminary plat, and that's what this is, correct? The
Well, this is
preliminary,
the sketch plan.
so this is the
It's working
sketch,
Up to being.
the preliminary plat.
preliminary After the new committee,
I think that's here. This is under the sketch,
reviews it and does what
Plan.
they want to.
right, 5 point. The sketch.
Which
plan.
is what she just gave, but then there's more.
Well, then those are the proposed. So that's the existing. and
Building
proposed.
envelopes.
Yeah, I know those are on. there.
So they're kind of hard for anyone in this room to see, but there are the light yellow shapes inside of the lots. And they
Okay.
reflect some of the things that determine the building envelope. The building envelope is the area that buildings can be built on the land. And the zoning setbacks, wetland buffers and conservation buffers are the primary ones, and steep slope buffers.
And I can see that you've got some buffers on some
Yeah.
of your,
Looks like you do have a question.
Just clarification, sorry, it's hard to hear a little bit from it.
Oh.
Is that considered the preliminary sketch, what you have here right now, or not?
It's the first of the preliminaries. It's pre-preliminary plat.
Pre-preliminary.
Yes.
Not the preliminary. I didn't see
Yeah.
a pre-preliminary in the whatever the laws.
Right.
I saw preliminary sketch, but not
Right.
pre-preliminary.
so we
sketch.
that would come to a hearing. The preliminary plat will come to the hearing, and I think that what I understand is that this has been a volunteer committee and the town approved, supported the select board to a town committee, which is good. We can hear from you. I think you'll know the time frame, your committee, when that transaction is gonna happen. So it'll be an official town committee, which can look at, then we'll take over this process, correct? From this
Point of order.
volunteer community. Yes,
I think you're projecting what the future intent is. There is no town committee. It might be in a week, there will be.
well,
But
that's
you
what
can't
I didn't,
assume there is.
I'm sorry if you misunderstood me. I said, my understanding is that the town is planning to appoint a committee.
So I think the key point is that the owners have authorized this group to bring this sketch plan,
Who authorized?
the owners of the property.
Okay, so you can speak for the owners,
Yes.
granted.
Yes,
But not the town.
You cannot speak for the town.
right, the town is. so-
At this point, the town's
Because
not
of
an
the-
applicant.
And no plan, the town has not made plans yet. In a week, they might.
That's great. Okay, well, we are talking about, the question to my understanding, Charlie, was, is this the preliminary plat? No.
It's called a sketch plan and it's a pre-preliminary plat. And I think for me, myself, I see any comments given tonight is very useful that I could pass on to the new committee and then they can begin to take on the design. So, it's been evolving since February 8th. And, yeah,
Okay,
this is the purpose of tonight. What is warned and then reviewed as the preliminary plat is also a preliminary design.
well, and I can say that, as the architect, I'm sure that you've seen the regs and you've put everything in there that's required. So I don't feel like, since it's not a hearing, that I need to go through that to make sure that this map meets all of those. So if you would like any feedback from the DRB, I can ask the DRB if you have any questions or support of this site plan.
I actually did have a question just about utilities. Are they, I don't see them shown on here.
Right. We've been drawing just the utilities for pricing. We have to work on schematic pricing, but they were not on here on this day, so it seemed inappropriate to add them. There was direction from the DRB at the last meeting that we should seriously look at underground electric. And we have been really working on that, just to, again, it is not a design question, because wherever it is on the site, it's a question of how does that work? Who installs what? How are the unit pricings working out? Et cetera. So we have to be able to, once the committee is formed, we need to be able to move forward pretty quickly.
Does anybody in the audience have a question for Sandra?
Does the map show all easements or deed restrictions on the property?
Yes, sir.
Does that include the deed restriction against development on a parcel C?
We have. Oh, do you mean, is it actually written on there?
If nothing is written on there that I'm aware of, I'm asking parcel C
Right.
has a deed restriction
Mhm.
in the adjacent landowner that
Right.
restricts development on parcel C.
Except for a road.
No, also for any development other than agriculture.
A road is allowed.
One road
There's
is
no time
allowed,
limit on the
yes.
road.
And there's also a first refusal on parcel C.
Yes, yes. The
Does that
Husfords
show up
are
on your,
right
on your
behind you.
plan?
The Husfords are right behind you.
The owners of the land are right behind you.
I've never seen a right of first refusal written on the plan, but I'm happy to add
Do
that.
those restrictions still exist?
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm happy to add that. I don't know that. it makes
I don't
a
know if
matter
they're
for tonight.
required on the site plan. I
Um,
think those are usually in the deeds.
They are in the deeds.
Yeah.
We were thinking more about things like there's a culvert thing, which is, it's a foundation frame. And then there's some utility easements over here, and they're shown on here. If there's any question, I'm happy to add that information for the preliminary plat.
We have another question.
Just-
Can you state your name?
Oh, sorry, Vicky McDonald, just a quick question. So, the gentleman here was talking about this property that is going to have a road near it. How far is the road away from the property's boundary line?
Right, 20 feet,
20
and that's
feet?
the requirement, right, and it's right here.
I'm hoping to do that maybe.
Yeah, you know what, I had it on here and it didn't, it's not called out as 20 feet on that drawing.
So that's
not
something
right
you
at all, so I remember that. But it is 20 feet.
Does anybody up on Zoom have any questions for the, Sandra and Arian? If you want to give us a little raised hand or something. Okay. There's two, Janice, okay, yes, Janice?
Hi. I guess I just wanted to address the elephant in the room. I mean, that is sort of the cause for maybe some of the nitpicky questions that are coming out. Just, sort of for the record, I appreciate how much Sandy's been working on this, my goodness, and Arian and everyone on the committee. But I think there is a perception among I don't know how large, proportion of the Plainfield community that after our after town meeting, the intention that was expressed by, we felt, the select board members and other people who were advocating for voting on the reserve fund, that we would wait until the town committee was founded, and the town committee could then look at the maps, reconsider, take other voices, take other perceptions. And I mean, I understand that, this is probably, okay and legal, to have this discussion, but it seems to many of us, it seems to me premature, and also to sort of fly in the face of the intention of the vote and the discussion. And that's concerning. I know there are many different interpretations, and I know there's a reason to keep going and to speed things up. And I appreciate that. But I wanted to say that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments that people would like, or questions you have for today? Board, no? Do you have some other things you want to discuss with the DRB?
Regarding the proposed site plan?
No,
you
you
said you
said
had questions.
schedule and you had some other questions.
Yeah.
This, I
think
don't
we can
think
put that
we-
down.
Yeah.
Would this be helpful to circulate?
Is anybody? Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna write down that 20-foot note.
Yeah.
If someone in particular would like to take those home, they're welcome to have them.
You had some other
Mhm.
items you wanted to discuss.
Mhm. So, this is, I see this night is very useful for going over the scope of what will be asked in the development, sorry, the application, so that we can be thorough. And, I also have some questions about the process of DRB review. So, it is a major subdivision of it's a PUD of a subdivision type,
Yes,
and there are zoning components to it.
yes.
So, because our original plan was to submit for the preliminary plat on March 17th. And I don't think that's appropriate.
You mean
Because-
submit it so that it
For
would come to
warning.
hearing in April, and
Right.
that's, okay,
And I think that's inappropriate
yeah,
because the committee hasn't convened
right.
and decided what they need to do. So I don't know what the schedule is, and I'm sure that other people will discuss this. But I would like to float the idea of a special meeting. And that's the first I've mentioned that, but I would like to float that idea rather than delaying a month. So I think it's really important that the committee meet before something's submitted.
Yeah, and the committee, if the committee makes that request to the DRB, we can consider that.
Thank you. That
Okay,
would be great.
I think that's where we'll go.
Thank
We'll
you
ask
for
the
that
committee, if the
direction.
committee asks us, because they
Yep.
can submit the evidence within the time to
Yep.
get it to warning, so it'll be up to them to do that.
And just a point of clarification,
Yeah.
what is the warning period for a special meeting for a preliminary?
I think it's the same, isn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah, you'd have to have the same
Yeah, which is how many days?
15 days.
Well,
15 days?
But I need the it's 15 days warning, but then I have to warn in the Times
And
Argus,
it's-
which
yeah.
means another 5 days before that.
So 20th is when you like it?
I would like it at 25 days,
Okay.
Ideally.
ideally, because it's a lot of paperwork.
And then if you're gonna ask us to, as the members of the board, to have a special meeting, that also means we have to make sure our schedules can
Yeah,
accommodate that if we're gonna consider that, so
and
the
just,
most time that the
because-
committee could give us would be best.
and because this is like sort of a fact finding, and some of these things are gonna have to go to the newly formed committee as an official proposal. But if we were to look at a date in the later half of April, are there some specific days that would be better?
I just know I'm not available on the 23rd, so.
I'm gone the last week of April.
Yeah.
Last week of April is a bad week.
I suggest we wait until the committee
Yeah,
asks you
yeah.
to consider
Yeah,
that.
I agree.
Okay. And I want to let the public know that we've been working on the abutters list, and that's been working on that with the listers. And we will be making sure, and it's part of the process, that it will be mailed to you certified, which seems a little formal, but
You can also hand deliver it, but you just have to have them sign off. So if you want to go knock on their
might
doors
be
and
more friendly.
hand them, and you
Yeah.
just need them to sign that they received.
Yeah, so maybe the abutters could let me know how they'd like to receive it. We're also making a courtesy list for people who are not abutters. That probably care about the project, and that includes people along the road in Marshfield. And it includes the Marshfield town clerk. Okay, so now on to the next question. There will be as many preliminary continuations as necessary until you reach a point where you're comfortable making a decision.
I would think that a preliminary plat would have to meet all the requirements of the zoning regs, so as long as it met, like, one of the things I would ask is that it would have to meet what a PUD does, which is, you're allowed, extra, density credits, right? So whatever is presented is gonna have to meet that can't exceed that. That's one thing I think that maybe people are concerned about.
Sure.
So I think that, just, the density piece has
Yeah.
to, we can't go beyond what is permittable by the town.
Absolutely. So when you are ready to make a decision, you issue the decision and then the appeal starts after that.
Yes,
Now, as I understand it, sometimes the appeal is
appeal
at the,
period.
yes, the appeal period is at the end of the final plat review.
Yes,
I don't know the process for this, but I would like to request that instead, the decision is made at the end of the preliminary plat. And the appeal period is made then, because I think that would benefit everybody. If anybody is not happy with the project and would like to appeal it, it would be most beneficial to do it sooner before all of the state permitting happens.
well, let me refer to, our ZA over here. We have in the past done the preliminary and the final plat in one hearing, or no?
I've warned them that way, but if you read the regulations, we need to have, the DRB needs to have a preliminary plat decision. And especially when you have lots of people interested.
Yep.
That would be very important.
So then we need to stick to 2 hearings.
Okay, and as I understand, the instructions are explicitly that the appeal period has to pass before the final plat can be started
No,
for review.
No,
No.
no, the preliminary plat doesn't have an appeal period. So you have a preliminary plat meeting, hearing, then you have a final plat hearing. That's where we approve it. Okay,
So
and
I-
then that's when the appeal part period
So
starts,
I don't-
after the final plat.
I don't know what
Hearing.
so I don't know if there's a way to amend that, because it would be more useful to have the appeal
At
after the preliminary.
preliminary.
Because there is a huge amount of state permitting that happens after preliminary review. Huge amount of state permitting. And and then we can't start the final plat until we know that the state permits, and I had read something that the state permits have to be approved before you go to final plat.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay,
So I think it would behoove everybody to have a comment period, a legally binding comment period after the preliminary plat decision is made. Approval or,
well, see, I don't think we approve anything at the preliminary plat. It's really, it's like, we go through the regs.
Mhm.
We make sure that everything's required for a major subdivision and your PUD conditions, that we
Mhm.
set those conditions. Don't we, at that preliminary, or we set them at the final, Karen?
I'm reading the action on page 56, the action on preliminary plat.
Okay, let's read, because I remember we didn't make a decision. We just said, okay, we approve this looks
We're
good,
gonna
now
do it,
you
so we
can
don't
come
need to-
back. And I remember a lot of our preliminary plat hearings were like, okay, did you just dot all your i's and cross your t's and everything looks good and check off? That's how it was. The preliminary plat was, well, oh no, you're missing this and you need to
Right.
do that. And then, okay, come back to the final, you did that, okay, then.
right,
you're
my
set.
assumption is that the final plat is really just making sure that everything that was discussed is covered in the
Yes,
drawings.
yes, that's my understanding.
Okay,
So we do, yeah, we can set conditions according to this.
At the
the
preliminary.
Preliminary, I mean, and part of the purpose of that preliminary hearing is so that if folks are opposed to any portion of it, they can go on record saying so, and that can be considered as part of the process. I know that's not what you're saying, a legally binding
well,
appeal
the
period,
actual peer period.
but I would hope that if folks had issues with it, they would come out then, so that you would know what to expect.
Okay,
Yeah,
in the
and
appeal
making,
process.
yeah,
So, but if you read number 3, okay, within 45 days of the completion of the public hearing and or continuation thereof, the Development Review Board shall approve, modify, and approve or disapprove said preliminary plat.
so it's really the approve, I really do think the approval or disapproval at that.
Does
point.
happen at the end of the preliminary.
No, that wasn't
You
the
just said
final.
final or?
Within 45 days.
Within 45 days, the DRB has to approve, modify, and approve or disapprove said preliminary plat. Okay.
So that's the final plat hearing. It has to
No,
be
that's
done.
the-
That's preliminary.
That's preliminary.
I mean, we usually do it as part of the meeting, I think, so,
They're giving you buffer time to review it.
right,
Okay, thank you.
but we have to do something within 45 days, so. If we
Oh.
need more time to consider what happens in the hearing. That gives us the ability, I think, that's my take on it, is that it gives us the ability to take that time,
If
but
you keep reading.
Yeah.
Development Review Board findings, conditions of approval, or the grounds for any modification required, or for their disapproval. And provisions for appeal under section 8.7 shall be set forth in a written notice of decision. So you have to write it, you have to write a decision.
yes,
And it has to have the appeal part, which is, it goes to the, if they appeal within the 30 days, it then goes to the environmental court. Right, so. So there is gonna be a decision written, and there is appeared on base reading this, that they, as an option to appeal.
After the final plat,
No,
at the
preliminary.
preliminary.
Yeah.
Okay, I missed that.
It's on page
Oh.
56.
I think there's another period after the final as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
construction
so you're
cannot
right.
commence.
You were right.
Yeah, I just
I
wanted to
was
make sure that
involved.
everybody was on the same page.
No,
so
I'm
that
sorry.
No one doesn't, I don't want people to miss an opportunity that they'd like to have.
So they would appeal to us though, not the environmental court. Or the preliminary?
You have to look at section 8.7. We have new rules and regulations that we're just trying to.
I'm gonna have to read them. I just got them today, pulled them out today, so.
Let's see what 8.7 says. And it's a level 82-page document now.
Sorry,
It says-
83.
83, oh, sorry. It's a big-
8.7, which
yeah.
This
This
is
is filed with
secretary
the
of
development review board
development.
within 15 days.
You guys don't have to,
Decision.
that's one.
Okay.
Part of the
15.
problem.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
you see that in 8.7?
yeah,
And interested, see, this might not be, yeah, 15 days.
I took the liberty of emailing people that I know who are on the Zoom, this document. Would it be okay if I shared it with other people in the room? Cause I'm gonna be asking some questions from the front
Sure,
page.
sure.
I'm gonna make sure. everybody has- that they're familiar with the project.
I got some too.
I guess I'm confused. Where Karen was saying that if we make a decision. at the preliminary, I don't
Right, yeah, it
find
does
them.
say,
That I don't remember.
Can somebody state that as just like a sequential timeline to make sure?
Would any of you? like
Yes,
to-
please.
That's pretty clean.
I got one.
Okay. Karen,
Yeah.
you're set?
I have one. He might need one.
There you go.
thank you.
Okay.
So,
Major subdivision.
on 50, page 56.
Mine's not page.
Oh,
That
5.5
Yep, I want 5.5, major subdivision.
on the
Yeah.
action.
Okay, you're right. Well, and then what's the final plat? Let me read that. It says minor. You want to speak to your piece of information? I can look at this another time.
Okay, and we can continue. I just wanted to make it public to try to start working on that question. Thank you.
And there's,
I mean, I don't know if it's a typo, but here it says, under major subdivision, set 5.6, it says within 6 months of classification as a minor subdivision or of a, oh, okay, I get it. It's a preliminary plat approval, which we do only for majors.
Right.
Yeah.
And there is a question, this probably is for Karen up there, someone's asking about Act 2. How Act 250 fits in.
Oh, Kirsty,
I talked to Michael Donner, who's there. I do not know about Act 250.
Do you know, do you
Yep,
have,
I
yeah,
do.
why don't you
Yeah.
ask that, answer that question then?
yes. We are not ready to apply to Act 250. We have not gotten a decision yet if we have to apply. I have been following the criteria, there are 10, so that we are ready if and when. So, the stormwater and, erosion control are major parts of that, and you cannot submit until those are done. It's, let's just say it would be sometime this summer, if it comes to pass that we apply. I don't know if I'm talking loud enough, sorry.
But you've done preliminary work that would meet
Yes,
the
all
Act
10
250,
criteria.
that's what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah,
You've considered it in your proposal?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Yeah, and Janice, I just looked, it's just like the same, pretty much the same exact language in the final plat review
Okay,
for the action of approval within 45 days and such forth conditions, same.
so I guess just to, because you said, so they can appeal the preliminary and they can appeal the final? So
I'm not the expert.
is that what you're reading, Seth?
Yeah, the difference that I saw in these, it sounds like for the preliminary, they can appeal to the development review board. For the
Okay.
final, they would appeal
Right.
to the environmental division.
Okay, so if people have concerns about what we approve in the preliminary, they would come to us. And then there's another chance to revisit that at the final plant hearing. Okay, that sounds, that now I understand our role. Thank you.
And so does that mean that the final plat hearing must be at the end of the appeal period for the preliminary?
Yeah.
There are two conditions to go to final plat. One is state permits are finished, and the other is the appeal period is finished.
Which is 45 days, you're
I
saying?
thought it was 30.
15, we have to make
15.
our decision
Yeah.
in 45.
Oh, 15 days.
Yeah.
And then you had your hand up?
Yes, Vicky McDonald. Can you confirm after the preliminary review, if it happened to get approved, that what is approved is valid for up to 1 year? Can you confirm that? I think I've read that somewhere in the rules. I just want confirmation.
I think that's the final approval is valid for one,
Okay, is that the final, not at the preliminary?
I believe so. I did see that.
There may be amount of time that you have to submit the final within, but I don't.
Well, it says
I don't know.
within 6 months, the preliminary has to be decided upon once it's submitted. And then within 6 months of classification or, or approval of the preliminary plat, the subdivider must submit. So,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that how long, the year, what you were asking about the
That
year.
was an 8.7.
Oh, that's
That
the appeal
being-
process.
Yeah.
But it's 15 days. You have 15 days to appeal, is what I read.
Under both the preliminary and the final?
Mm,
Yeah,
Yes, because they're both referencing the same section.
yes, that's what I see.
There was something I saw that had a year ago. What,
And then you saw something that had a year in it?
I did see something that had a year in it, and it seemed like
So
it
many
was.
things definitely in there.
If you approve the preliminary, that preliminary sketch was valid for up to a year. With your modifications and conditions that you placed on it, and I believe I read it, but I could be
I think-
totally mistaken.
I mean, and that sounds right, so that somebody can't just sit on a preliminary approval and then come back 5 years later and say, well, this has already been approved. If you're past that period, then
Well, I
think
saw
we
6
start-
months.
well, there's some.
Somewhere there's
And
buried.
I just want to, there was a question that came in here about the process. I think this person may have been out when you said that we are waiting for the committee in order to proceed. So that is the case for.
Yeah. We're just discussing, yeah, we're not moving forward yet. Charlie,
Charlie Cogburn, you're talking about a permit and may issue a permit. what are the conditions if the owner or applicant changes?
Then there would be no application.
So if the applicant or the owner changes,
Oh,
this process
You-
terminates?
yeah, I'm sorry, if you were saying if the owner wasn't supportive of the project, it wouldn't, you asked about the owner
There's several ways the owner could change. They could
change.
sell, they could withdraw their approval.
You know, now
They could
you're being
change their mind.
hypothetical, because we don't have an application yet. So, you know, we'll just wait and see what the town does. Can we do that? As you asked me
I would
before?
like some guidance. If the application or the applicant changes, for example, the town becomes the applicant. The town becomes the owner. Is the process that we're going through right now carry over?
That's a good question, and I could ask the Vermont, you know, League of Cities and Towns for an answer for
I
that.
asked Karen that question and
So,
it's,
well, basically, once there's a final, I mean, this is where it's hard, it's like, usually these things run with the land.
so it's really the owner.
Right, but
project.
now I think it is good to clarify if for some reason the owner is no longer those two entities and it's someone else before we've gone through the whole
Entire process.
process. And I think that's a good question to ask.
The city,
Right.
well,
And-
we can write that down, that question, and I could submit it.
Think about it.
That you'll think about it?
I think I'm gonna
Okay.
write myself a
Thanks,
note
Charlie.
right now.
All
But
right.
so that's kind of unusual to have this kind of process. I don't think we've had it in any of the permits that I've seen in the last, how long I've been here.
Wouldn't it be more standard for the process to conclude before there was an ownership change?
Can you speak up?
Aaron, wouldn't it be more standard for the process to conclude before there was an ownership change, in which case it would be tied to the land?
Seems most reasonable.
Seems
Right,
reasonable,
if,
yeah.
if the process is concluded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then it runs with the land.
In many other cases, the applicant combines with the owner in anticipation of the sale to the applicant.
Shall we go on?
And just note, I did find that language, it's the effect of the preliminary plat approval, it's effective for 1 year. And if no, actually, if you don't continue on, then you have to resubmit
Okay,
after that one.
there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Seth.
So what I handed out is a very rough, and actually wrote starting point. Because it would become part of the application when the committee's ready to submit it. It's a roadmap. I needed to kind of think through the procedural questions. It's required that the application include all of the variances and waiver, the various requests that are being made. I emailed this document to everybody whose email address I have. And I did not email it to Julie or to Carrie or to Lita. And if you would like me to do that, I can do that right now, very quickly. We are not going to, it's a 9-page document, we're not going through it.
Okay, good.
We're just gonna go through the top of the most of the document is a substantiation or discussion about these individual items. But I wanted to just go through them tonight and see if I'm on the right mindset.
Okay,
So this project is in the village district. So it's gonna require a joint zoning subdivision and PUD application since the project creates separate lots under PUD criteria. We anticipate the following requests for waivers, variances, guidance, access permits, conditional use, and lot line adjustments. So in the body of the document, which again is a rough draft, super preliminary draft, there's more details. So number one, conditional use. The community has expressed interest in a community center, which would be mixed use, which is a conditional use in the village district. It seemed wise to me, if this application goes forward, to include that so that the town would have an easier time finding a partner that wanted to build it. And then that person would not have to
Go through
then get
separate,
conditional
yeah.
use. It would save a step in the future.
Yep.
So I'd like to ask for that. Then there are 3 variances. The specifically lot sizes may be smaller than those allowed by the district for PUDs. So I think I have to ask for that variance, even though it says explicitly that it's allowed. But in 6.4. This is where it's like the wrong kind of like. But oh, they're gonna put 7, but it's density.
PUD would be under PUD, right?
It was actually under subdivision.
Oh,
Um,
community facilities, driveways,
density,
access.
lot size. It's on page 5 at the very bottom. The layout of lots shall conform to the dimensional requirements of the district in which they are located, except for planned unit developments. So I would think that I'm asking for a variance based on this, but because it says except for planned unit developments, it's not clear if I need to ask for a variance.
I don't think you'd have to. Because it's a
Okay.
part of what a PUD does is it cluster houses.
Okay, so my understanding now is that I can cross that one off.
Karen, would you agree with me on that?
I gotta find my zoning thing again. I haven't, like, this is like the first, like, we have 1 PUD in town. And we're not talking about, and I'm talking
We're not.
about like at the top of Gore Road, that is like two houses on 10 acres. Because,
Wasn't New Hamburger?
well, it was never,
It was already established,
it was
so they just
established. and-
rezoned.
And that was so long ago, like, this is actually really new. We have new regulations and we haven't experienced doing this big of a subdivision or a PUD.
Sure.
And so I think there's a really strong learning curve,
Yeah,
and you
And-
can read zoning a zillion times and.
I'm just, this
Yeah.
was a good opportunity to go over these questions tonight. So I don't personally need an answer tonight. I would need an answer before the application is submitted, because I'm evidently not allowed to add a request after it's submitted. So I just need to know in the next couple of weeks, and it might be that someone else has asked. This is definitely a variance request. There are some small lots. And there are some duplexes that have been discussed for the site. So I would like to ask to have a 0 side yard setback possible for those kinds of buildings. And then the other side yard setback would be 10 feet. And even back in colonial times, people on small lots would do that. They would shift the house over to the north side of the lot so that they could have more space to the south.
Even, Montpelier has houses
Yeah.
like that.
And it was called north side manors because people would put very few windows to the north so that the neighbor could have more privacy to the south. So it's called north side manors. And it becomes critical for duplexes because that lets them have 2 separate units with standard mortgages. They don't have to form a homeowners association and not be able to get a standard mortgage. So that's a variance I would like to request. And I know that's a variance. Then there's a question, and it's a little bit of confusion in section 2.7.4. I don't know if I'm asking for a variance or a conditional use. It's the front yard requirement. The ordinance promotes a lively neighborhood feel with an active connection between buildings and street. And it's promoting pedestrian paths and a common. But these little houses will probably feel like they're facing the path or facing the common, not so much facing the loop road. And so I would like, because there's not a lot of room to put a car as well as a little house on these little lots, I would like to be able to put some of the parking, it would be shared parking along the loop road. So that would technically be a front yard setback if, but it seems to me that people will want to put their doors and their porches towards the path and the common. And think of the loop road as more utilitarian. And you see that a lot in traditional developments. Often it's called an alley or a mew, where the road is more utilitarian. Being able to share parking, which is another part of this, a benefit of that would be that we can, for very small houses, they can have a shared vehicle charger. Rather than having a 200 amp service to every single tiny house, which seems a little silly. Especially if you can't even get your car like to your house, or you don't have a garage. So getting back to the front yard setback question. We have to ask for permission for the shared parking. And it's not clear because it's one of the criteria is that we have to show that we reduce parking by 50%. And right now the requirement is 1 car per unit. So I don't know, you can't have half a car. So 2 houses could share a car, but that's not too practical either. So I don't know if I'm asking for a variance or conditional use there. And again, I don't need an answer tonight. But I would love to have some direction on what I'm asking for before I submit the application. Are there any questions so far from the group? Not online. Okay. All right, we're getting through it. Okay, guidance. There's a, it says the DRB may require street trees at 40 feet apart, which is a great idea. I think we're showing 110 trees or something like that right now. But those trees on small lots are going to block solar collectors. And that's another sort of goal of this project is energy efficiency. In line with the town plan. So I'm going to be asking for some guidance on what to do when a tree would be blocking light and solar collection on a house. We could do trees just on the north side or eliminate some trees just on the right where there's tiny lots. There's a lot of ways to do this, but I'm requesting guidance on, is there flexibility in that 40-foot tree rule? So that we can have energy efficient homes. Some of these ordinance items that are new in the ordinance, I have to say, come from Chittenden County. And this is one. And it is nice to have street trees, but they have big lots over there and the tree's not shading the roof of the house. Okay. Next, guidance, section 3.4. So it's clear that we are allowed to have landlocked lots with a permanent right of way in Plainfield. So there are a number of the small lots that do not have frontage on a road. But they meet all the criteria for having access to the lot. So it has to be a 20-foot right of way, it can't be too steep, there's a lot of rules. And the fire department has approved that. So the question is, it's not clear what I'm asking for to do that. So is it a waiver or is it a variance? What is it? The access permit, there are 2 curb cuts on this project. One on Main Street, one on East Hill. I used the distance from the intersection for the move, one the shorter distance. So, that, we just have to finish those applications before we submit, but they're in process.
Okay, and now they go to the zoning administrator, they don't go to the select board anymore.
Right, they have to go, I think they actually have to go to DRB because there are 2 of them.
Well, you fill out a zoning
Yeah,
permit application, and that's one of those other things that needs to be
Okay.
redone because if the access permit doesn't
Okay.
apply now.
Well, I just filled it out.
Well, I know,
Alright.
but I think filling it out, I mean, we gotta figure this all out. I
Yeah.
mean, we passed zoning without thinking about all the different zoning
Right,
applications that we needed. But go back to the right of way. Typically, the right of way is a separate permit.
okay,
But I
Is it in the-
I
is there
don't
a
know,
form?
I mean, I don't know how it fits. I'll have to read more about PUDs, but typically a right of way would be a permit that would be looked for before, because you can't do the subdivision or anything without an approved right of way. So you have to get approval of a right of way. So
Okay.
it's so it's.
But
can
that
be-
doesn't seem to fit in a PUD.
I know, I have to read it more, but I'm just saying, historically, right of ways need to be approved before
Before
you
a
can
subdivision.
do the thing, because you don't have
Access.
access. And you have to have access in order to have a lot.
so my hope would be when this is submitted, that's all
Figured
in a
out.
row, line, in a line, and, but I do know that we have to have the signed access permit
Mhm.
finished before we can submit the zoning and subdivision permit, that's what it said in the
Right.
new direction, okay.
And that's completely new process, because it used to just be the road foreman and the select board.
Okay. Boundary line adjustments, there are, that I know of at this moment, 5, that there would be part of this project. We have to merge the 2 lots that are being purchased together before we can subdivide them. So I propose that that be part of this application so that it's all approved. And it would show up in the final plat. We may have to make 2 plats. That is how I've done it before in other towns, that the merge turns into 1 lot. And then it can be subdivided, so 3 days later you submit the next final plat. There are also a potential 4 lot line adjustments between the property and abutters. So we've discussed giving people land that is, I would call it residual, but it's in particularly for Alicia. It's important to give her a buffer, and that land is not usable as a house lot. So that would be a lot line adjustment. So it would be 2 lots, not adding a new lot. And that also may have to happen first before the subdivision. I don't know.
Wouldn't it be a boundary line adjustment?
Yeah, I'm sorry, other towns call it lot line.
Okay,
Excuse me, it would be a boundary, I'm asking for
Sorry,
5
yeah.
boundary line adjustments.
yeah, I would think it'd be fine to do it as a part of the application,
Okay,
the hearing.
So
Yeah.
a boundary line adjustment that is small, okay, if it's part of the subdivision, it has to be heard by the DRB. Right,
that's what I
Right.
thought.
but also if it's less than the lot size in the area,
Right.
and it's only doing two lots,
Mhm.
it can be done by the zoning administrator. So
Okay.
the size of the boundary line adjustment might, it will have to read them, but there are different criterias for boundary line adjustments. And I'm just trying to think about, you'd have to do the subdivision first to get the lot before you could do the boundary line adjustment.
I think it would be after the merge, because then it would be 1 lot and then it would be an adjustment with its abutter. But
We'll think about it. We have to think
yeah,
about it.
with plenty of time.
Yeah.
I just want to be very clear. My thought was to go through the formal process of boundary line adjustment. Because then everybody sees the whole drawing at once, rather than part of it going off with a zoning administrator.
Okay, yeah.
But it's up to you folks, how you'd like to do that.
I did just want to flag a comment from Janice that came in about concerns around allowing more cars than usually allowed. This is when we were talking about.
More
Parking.
cars and.
I'm not
Okay,
sure
the
that
number
was-
of units
yeah.
proposed has been troubling because of the car that go along. Okay, so right now, it's 1 car per single family home. And apartments are 1.5 cars per unit. So,
You're not proposing more.
No.
I think that was a
Go
misunderstanding.
ahead, Janine,
Okay.
but
Yeah. Hi,
You're-
Denise.
Hi, I love people. But I don't love cars. What I understood, and perhaps I did understand, that you're saying that, you're gonna have such small lots, such small units that, each person can't have their own car. To me, I'm not great at math, but it sounds like what you're asking for is a variance to allow all those small units to have cars when normally that size of a lot wouldn't allow each of those individual units to have cars. And so to me, I'm just seeing it as another reason why there are too many units. Because if you're making so many units that it's overriding, it's stretching, it's burdening what is normally allowed for cars, or
I think didn't make myself clear. The ordinance in, I think it's general or specific, I'm not sure. I could find it really quick. The requirement in Plainfield is 1 car per dwelling. So that's what we're proposing. We're not proposing more cars per dwelling. We're not proposing fewer cars per dwelling.
yeah, but so why were you saying that the person would have to share a car?
No, what I'm saying is the language for a conditional use is that you have to prove that you're reducing the overall number of cars by 50%. But we can't do that because we have to have 1 car per unit, so that's why
I
was
see, but the
asking
meaning of that is
if
that
I
you're
amend your clause
creating a
for-
development that doesn't have too many cars in it. I mean, that's the spirit of that concept,
I
isn't
think
it?
that comment in the ordinance, which covers all uses in the town, including commercial, is more about other uses. Will might be able to answer that, but my sense is that it's just one, I mean, we're not asking for anything special. We're following the rules, 1 car per unit. And that's.
Yes,
that
but
we're
they're
not
very
asking-
small units, so it's more cars in a
Ordinance doesn't
smaller.
say anything. Yeah,
But
the
isn't that true? I mean, isn't it, if you have very, very small units,
That's not my
that are
place
smaller
to
than
respond
usual,
to.
can I just finish my sentence? You're putting more cars per square feet than are usually allowed in those square feet. I think
Yeah.
I'm good enough at math to see that. And this is why I feel that there are too many units there, because it also comes with too many cars. Thanks.
Well,
Something to consider.
Understood.
yeah. I'm following the ordinance. Maybe the ordinance changes, but right now it's pretty clear. Okay, so then the other. Waivers for building envelopes on slopes over 15%, that is probably not going to be an issue. It's in the amendment process already, but I just wanted to flag it. And so 6.9 utilities. If we end up going with aerial power, we're doing everything we can for underground power, but if we have to do aerial, then I will have to ask for a waiver for that. And that's my list.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. This is, you have some,
Merging 2 lots.
Yeah.
There are 3 lots involved here.
Okay, maybe I made a mistake. So there's
Or 4.
Syringes lot. Oh, no, the lots A, B, and C are one property, I think. Are they not?
3 different.
Talking about where the trailer is.
I know. But
Separate deeds.
that's what I thought too.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. I did not know that.
so it's
I
3
will,
lots.
I will write to the owners and ask them. That is really a big help. Thank you, John.
And I forgot about the trailer, so yeah, 4.
4 lots.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Can you tell us the total acreage? Do you know?
23.9. Thank you, that's. I have never seen the actual deed, so there must be
Do the
three.
title search.
Yeah,
Well, there was a title search. And I will check in with the surveyor on that. Thank you, that is really helpful.
So you have anything else that you were asking from us? Is that
No,
it
I'm
for
happy to
tonight?
take any questions.
You've given us a lot to think about,
Vicky.
and
Vicky,
we'll see
you
what
got a
happens with the next round. Yeah,
Speaking of, I'm just curious, how many lots are actually proposed on what you showed tonight? The number.
40. There is a number 41 lurking on the civil engineer's drawing, which is a residual, it's not a house lot. But it's, it would be given to Alicia and Phil. So there's 40 lots right now. 3 on Main Street and 37 up above.
Follow that up with one more question for you. In what you have on your sketch plan, how many of the lots are below the minimum that's in our zoning plan?
Oh, that's a good question. I have forgotten. Let me see. They were roughly a third of the 40. I have to count them. So.
a
the
third would
new-
be like with part of the new reg, right?
Yeah, that the 10%, so
Oh, the 1/10 of it.
1/10 acre is makes it a little bit of a question here. So the standard lot size, minimum lot size, excuse me.
No,
I'm sorry.
making more room for it.
Is 0.2 acres. And I have now lost track if the 0.1 acre is in the amendments or if it's in the adopted.
It's in the amended. I think.
Okay, so it's coming
Right?
up in the amendments.
No?
It's in the.
I-
It's in the.
Oh, it's in the adopted,
It's in
1/10.
adopted, But I believe the amendment is adding that it needs to be a conditional use
Oh, it's just adding it. Oh, okay.
down to a 10.
So then that should not count then. So then anything that's less than a fifth of an acre is 45 divided by 5 is 9,000. So the question is, how many are below 9,000 square feet, more or less, right? So the answer is 1, 2, 3, 4. 5. I'm just using a straight 9,000. 6. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Because that is combining what we call the small lots and the tiny lots.
Right here.
How many was that?
Sandy,
Pardon?
how many was that?
I have counted 22 right now. Please don't shoot me if I counted wrong, but I was trying to be careful.
12 or 13 are under 1/10 of an acre.
So what is interesting is that if you take this whole property and you divide it by 40 lots, the average density over the whole property is 0.6 acres. So we are, but using the theory of planned unit development, creating open space and making, instead of spreading out 40 units, 40 lots over a 24 acres, we're spreading, condensing it down to something like 8 acres. So it's we have, we're at 60% open space right now, which is what the community asked for in their design. And we're meeting all of the requirements, 15% open space. And and then for the parks and the common area. And then the total including wetlands is I think 14 something acres. I hope that answered.
Would you say the driving force for the number of lots is the need to pay back the loan?
So the driving force for the number of lots was that workshop. And it's interesting, when we've had 2 surveys since then. The first one was kind of a scatter chart of did people think things were the right quantity and the right lot size. And the second survey was a stronger bell chart. So the majority of people were saying that this is about the right number of lots and the right number of lot size. And a few people said they would like more lots, smaller, and a few people said they would like fewer lots, larger. So my deduction from that is that we're actually closing in on the sweet spot. And we are below, if we use the rule of, I think it was a third, oh, Will's not there. So many at 1/10 of an acre and so many at 0.2 acres. We're actually below that. We would have 54 lots using a straight up old fashioned subdivision.
We have a question from Alicia.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me? Because my mic doesn't always
Oh,
work.
yeah.
Okay, good. I often tell it to unmute and it mutes. Sandy, with all due respect, and I think you're great and have really enjoyed working with you. I attended the charrette, and it was couched when you say it was the number of lots was determined by the design workshop in the community. It was couched in a way that our goal was to get 40 lots. And I see one of my table mates. So we all, went, yep, thank you. Mary, we went about it, and I know I checked with other people, and that was the understanding. It was really, how do you want to distribute them? So it wasn't an open-ended question about what do you think are the right number of lots. It was unless people were going to be wildly obstreperous in the midst of coming together to do work, people were being conditioned to design something based on 40 lots, and the question really was how many of each size and how did you distribute them?
I think that you mentioned the survey.
No, I didn't.
You did, yeah, and I think.
I did not.
Oh, okay, I thought you did mention this.
You have your hands up?
Yeah, Jeanette Hosford, I attended the charrette as well, and, I agree with Alicia, and my understanding when I was there at the different sessions was, it wasn't even necessarily 40 lots, it was how many lots do we have to reach that $2.5 million? So we were all, I don't want to say forced, but directed at the $2.5 million. So it wasn't, if we could do 4 lots and distribute it over the 2.5, it didn't matter. It was, what are you gonna do to do the $2.5 million? How many, and it was almost, being a direct abutter, it was kind of discouraging.
Yeah.
That, how many can we get, it was almost a game, like, I thought we were playing Monopoly.
Yeah.
And
I think so the first session was more on concept, and the second session, which was in the afternoon, we did introduce this budget question. And I had a long talk about that afterwards with Steve Farnham. And he said that he really felt that the concept part was getting kind of squashed off to the side in this need to have me budget. And so we had a long talk about that at the committee and said, you know what, the concept is more important. So that is, because at one point it was up to 60 lots. And we've gone way down from there, and kind of reached the point where we don't know if we're verifying the budget to see where we think that would be important information for the committee. 2 people.
She had her hand up
first.
first.
Hi, Lauren Geiger.
Lauren, yeah.
I was at the charrette too, and definitely the financial consideration was a part of it. But I also remember at the very beginning, there was an open question about, which of these things are the most important to you in terms of the design of the overall area. And many people, I believe, answered that the number of houses was one of the most important things to them, because they wanted to provide as much housing for people displaced by the flood and people who cannot afford rents in the area, et cetera, et cetera. And I have also heard a tremendous amount of interest in local residents in small houses or tiny houses, similar to one that is being built across from the lot that I live on. I live on a village lot that's 0.10 acres and in a fairly large size house for that amount of acreage. And so I just thought I'd mention that.
And for me, when with yours, I was concerned about one, I was interested in the number of lots for almost the opposite reason. It wasn't the number of how many lots can we jam into this land, it was how can we do this project without having to jam that many houses in. You know?
Steve said that quality should be more important than the quantity. And it was interesting, after he and I talked, I actually had photographs of all of the 10 original concepts that were made. And I went and looked at them because they were kind of innocent of the budget question. We did hand out a sheet at the beginning. I can't even remember what it looks like right now, but it was just a lot less, it was more focused on concepts. And anyways, we actually, this design does approach more what is 10, and I think in my head, I discounted a lot of the crowding from the afternoon.
You had your hand up?
Yeah, I have something different to say now, though, based on what the moment said.
Could you speak up, Michael?
Oh, sorry, it's microphone down again. My impression is the opposite, that there's a lot of people in town who wish that it wasn't so densely developed. That the concept of tiny houses is fine, but so many tiny houses isn't fine. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe there is a groundswell of people who are looking for as much housing as possible, but I was wondering, Sandy, if $1 million grant came the project's way, would that drive you to consider less lots?
I'm not a member of the
I
committee.
mean, well, do you have a sense from the committee?
So I do
Am
know
I supposed
the
to?
committee's been looking high and low for funding. And what I've heard, I understand is that there is a real pressure on people that don't have homes right now. Every month they're losing equity by paying rent. When they can't live in a house that they own and haven't been paid off out by FEMA yet. And it's for other people besides me to make that choice. And it will be an important question facing the committee. Then the next one.
Harry and Jumri, I would speak to that a little bit. I mean, when this project first got started, one of the defining characteristics was how many houses we're looking at losing in the FEMA buyout or dwelling units, and that number sits at 37. And
that's including all the apartments.
it's including all the apartments. I
units.
feel like actually I'm misspeaking. It's right around there. I should know this number at the buyout coordinate. But,
Yeah.
37 was what we.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's 12 apartments, the Heartbreak and the house next to ours.
yeah, I always have to double count the list because I always forget about the ones that are on this side from 2023. Anyway,
Right. Oh, that's right, yeah.
it's approximately that number. And so we're talking about from like, if 40 lots are created, it is kind of, and all those other lots go away, and we had a housing shortage to start out with. We're not gaining a lot of ground, and I think that's been one of the, from a conceptual standpoint, has been the flood, precipitation of this project is really coming out of the 23 and 24 floods, which, rocked our town. And looking at that loss is certainly conceptually, I think a number, at least for me, and I think others on the committee, and I think also from public surveys, has been something that's come back as meaningful. So, I mean, there are different constraints, there are different zoning requirements, there are different budgetary requirements, there are all of these things, and then there's also like housing and having housing to replacing the housing cost, and we already report on housing. So I mean, I think all of these things play into the sort of scoop of how these things come out, if that would be fair. To speak to your question. Yeah.
Can you speak your name?
Yeah, my name's Kim Medalinsky. I was part of design, sure, and have been involved in the process. you know, from the beginning, this is about having a village and a village type feel, whether, you know, the exact density or number of lots, you know, can be up for discussion. This conversation got started by what determined this number of lots, and Sandy, who ran our design workshop, you know, we were kind of playing a game of, this is the land, this is the budget, these are the values that we're bringing to it. We want to replace village housing, we want to add affordable housing. And it seemed totally reasonable to have the budget guide us, because you want a project that you can afford. I also saw, I saw a lot of people really clamoring for dense housing, small lots, some tiny lots. The number of tiny lots is not, is some numbers like 12 or 10 or something like that. I also heard a lot of value placed on open space. There's buildable land that people in that community decided not to build on that could have been built on. So there are a number of values from a number of different streams that are coming into this schematic. What are we calling it? The sketch. And that has continued to be refined with continued avenues of values that are, you know, some voices are coming from over here, some voices are coming over here. I hear the conversation today dominated about the number of lots, but I think it's also important to, one, recognize that budget is a real concern, and surely a huge influx of grant funding will have an effect. You know, it's not up to us to decide what that is, but also remember that these other values have been represented that have shaped the map that was circulated here, and meant that there's an absence of lots on a beautiful hill or reaching around the hill, because that's also something that's been communicated as a desire. So there are a number of ways in which this vision has been shaped, and both the number of lots have been shaped.
Yeah, I also would just make a comment that I remember at town meeting when I think someone stood up and talked about, you know, not wanting to have many tiny houses because people don't want to live in tiny houses, people want larger houses, and they were expressing that they wanted to have sort of houses that could be generationally transferred, et cetera, et cetera. And what I'm hearing from a lot of people that I know who were displaced by the flood, who have had a very difficult time finding rentals, and that they would love to have a tiny house, and that, you know, they may not live in it forever. It may just be something that they live in for 5 years and then sell to another person who's trying to get started and build equity in a home.
So the buildable area of these tiny lots is at least 1,000 square feet. So one could build, I don't know that people will build right up to the boundary, but it would be relatively easy to build a 600 square foot house on those lots. And I have worked with a lot of people in the workforce. I think that's the current name for it, but people who work at Vermont Compost, at the co-op in Montpelier, and they think that's big. And they have small families. I think one nice thing about a subdivision is people get to choose what they're gonna build. And it may be that they build only 300 square feet to begin with, but they could add on to it over time. That it's a really, it's kind of the way we've done things in the United States for hundreds of years, that people first built a very small place and then they added on to it. So, or they could move.
Yeah.
Well, it is almost 9 o'clock. I'm wondering if there's anything else that you said you're done. Is there any other questions at this point from y'all here? I think, is there somebody up here with their hand up? There's,
It's in the chat. Yes, why the 2.5 number? I don't know what that.
I think they're saying about the budget, right?
2.5 million.
Oh,
Which-
Where did that come from?
that number was as good a job as we could do in January. And that was with no design. And I had to try to lay out using the 0.2 acre lots. And then, like threw them away, but I had to lay it so that we could figure out how many linear feet of road there might be. And that is where we got the $2.5 million number. We're still trying to make sure we're actually sending it out to a cost estimator now to make really sure that we have a good sense of what this number was to build. And then that would be useful information for the committee as they move forward, and the committee is going to have a hard job. They're going to be weighing the reality of a much more detailed budget. They're going to be all of these social questions, if you will, and aesthetic questions and land questions, and it's going to be. I'm very excited to see what this new committee comes up with. I think the design will be stronger for it.
Yeah, Karen,
We need to know the last names of the people up there that have just their first names, like
Carrie. Carrie, can you tell us your last name or write it in the chat if you don't want to tell us? Who else? Paul B.
Well,
We need to know some names.
Yeah, no.
Say it again.
It's
Paul B.
Paul Bover. I'm working with Sandy and Aaron on this.
He's been
Okay.
sitting here quietly all evening.
Okay, Bo Bear.
And Tyler is his last name.
And Tyler's last name.
Sorry, he's an engineer.
And then we got Rose Paul, Rose Paul and George Bringston. Carrie. Tom and Carrie, there it is, Mancini,
Yeah.
thank you. And then Janice, can you give us your last name? Okay, you got that, great.
Laura Sarasso, probably.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
What was your name?
Thank you.
Madeline.
For the next page,
page.
are you taking the same position that the applicant is not going to be the owner? Yeah.
The owner needs to give written permission to submitted with the application, and the applicant, Karen, well, that's my understanding. So we were.
Yes, we understand that there's a difference of opinion on the first part is 5.6, but plan 5.3.
Could you get a legal opinion?
We did ask, didn't we?
I don't remember.
I thought, because remember, we had this going on with the 79 Bean Road, we had an applicant that wasn't the owner, and they said that the applicant didn't have to be, you said the applicant didn't have to be the owner.
Right, but that's not subdivision, that was zoning, so we probably should ask another.
Will you write these questions down, and I can either ask them, or you can ask them,
Well,
whoever.
I'm writing these little notes, and then
We'll discuss it.
We'll have to formulate it.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. We will find an answer to that.
Would anyone like to have these drawings?
Why, you don't need them?
No.
And this is Rose Paul.
I know.
Sometimes paper's better.
I'm a paper person.
Sandy, what's Paul's last name, please?
Boisvert, BOISV, like Victor.
Yep, I know.
ERT.
I know. Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
We do have, if we're done, we can be done. Are we done for tonight? And when the committee brings us a formal application, we'll be back again at this. We do have one more item by board members. We have a potential new board member. Jesse, you want to come? You want to say anything?
Yeah.
Come stand up and say something. Yeah, sure. Please.
Well, I'm Jesse Cooper, member of the Planning Commission, and I joined the Planning Commission maybe, I think it was about 6 years ago. And at the time, I didn't know the difference between the Planning Commission and the Development Review Board. And as I learned by being on the Planning Commission, what the zoning regulations involve, the role of the zoning administrator, the role of the Development Review Board, it started becoming clear to me that at some point. I thought I would probably transition from the Planning Commission to the Development Review Board, because I'm interested in the way that the zoning regulations actually play out. On a case-by-case basis, because I have a background in building and have gone through permitting processes and designed homes. And sort of worked on personal projects where I had to do my own permitting, and I find it interesting. To see, an applicant show up with a project that they're trying to affect, and to see how it interacts with the town and the state. And so I was at town meeting when you mentioned that
We need more
board
members.
needs more members, and I thought, okay, maybe this is the moment to throw my hat in. I am still on the planning review board, and I think we need to actually confirm whether or not I can be on both.
Karen,
I'm
do you know?
actually intending to leave the planning commission.
Yeah, and that puts, now the planning commission is, if he leaves to come here and can't do both.
Which, yeah.
Ask
I would-
Will, can Jesse be both on the DRB and on the planning commission?
I think so, but I'm checking with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, just so we're all sure.
Okay,
What?
you can always find somebody to replace you on the planning commission.
He can't leave the planning commission.
He's a planning commission too.
Yeah.
You wanna leave the zoning administrator.
I signed up for another year. Yes,
Yeah.
I mean.
Can have them be the clerk.
So if
Well,
it is a
okay, so-
problem, I'll let you, if it's a problem, I'll let you know, but I think it'll be okay.
Well, so, okay, thank you. If you let us know if it's not okay, and what you wanna do is write the select board and say you would like to be appointed to the DRB. It's an appointed
Right.
position. And they usually just refer to me or the board, and I would send a letter of support if I'm sure the board's supportive of that. Okay, I just wanted
I'll
to make it.
Mark, and then if that makes sense, then I'll send it along.
Okay, and let us know. You've got my email.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Charlie,
Not to muddy the water here. As I understand it, the DRB has 5 members.
Okay, sure. I'll
You
get
don't
back.
exist right now, maybe a 4th does.
Who's that?
I asked, what is your quorum? And how many votes does it take of those present to pass?
so if we are a 5-member board, it would be 3, but since we're a 3-member board, all 3 have to agree to have a quorum. Is my understanding.
My understanding is that we are appointed board and therefore we don't know. It's something about the quorum, that we don't have to have the 3 members to be a quorum. We just have to have a majority of our members.
Yeah, that came up as a question before.
Before, and
Yeah.
we decided that a majority was fine, which was 2.
A majority of?
The 3,
The 3.
Yeah,
which is
3
2.
for-
Would you
Yeah.
like to join us, Charlie?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Well, that's why we're recruiting members.
I understand. I just want it to be clear going forward what your authority is if they're.
Well, if we
3
get
members
4,
or
then I'd say 3, it would still be a majority.
vote. Is it vote of those present or is it vote of those?
Present.
In order to have a meeting.
You
we
have
would
to have a quorum.
Yeah.
Right,
I'm not talking about.
right, I'm writing this on my little VLC thing.
Okay, another question.
Maybe that's been very rare, too, I will say.
Yeah, I think.
We try to reach a consensus.
Yeah.
If we can.
Yeah.
So, but I understand your question, and we'll try to find an answer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I make a motion to adjourn.
You make a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody,
Thanks,
for
everybody.
participating. Thank you.
And I'd like to thank the DRB members.
I was thinking you were going, you could give up your clerk.